I took a bath with my roommate today. It escalated. My sister laughed right in my face and said, "You should have seen it coming, loser. I mean, you guys have been bathing together for months, and my defense, it started 3 months ago when I was still in a very vulnerable position with my bad posture and my broken leg. I desperately needed help, and Joel happened to be the first contender. Then we became part of the weird system. I can't think of any other way to put it than it was impossible to get out of it. Well, at least for a month. But it didn't stop at a month, because until then we were blissfully unaware of how intimate our habit of bathing together had become. And even if we weren't completely blissfully unaware, we were good at pretending that everything was fine and wonderful and not so bad. So how did it start? Well, the real story goes back about 7 months, when Joel came down with a fever. We had become good friends the night before he got sick. We had gone on a trip during the peak of winter. We had shared a ride with a pretty sick person, and the next thing we knew, Joel was sick. We came back, and for the next 12 days I took care of them. From cooking to cleaning, it was all on me, as guilty as Joel felt about it. He really wasn't in a position to help me, despite the claims he made at the time, but that had oddly left a good impression on our friendship. So when I broke my leg in a car accident 4 months later, he promised to help me. Help me out. Of course, at first it was limited to the same duties as I had, cooking and cleaning and making sure I had my medicine. But then on the second day, when I realized that not taking a bath was not an option, I told Joel that I was planning on taking a bath. Hygiene was important to me. It was somewhere between 9 p.m. and Joel had just returned from his evening jog. It was Saturday. He was home. That was why I chose this activity. If something happened or I needed help, it would be easier to ask. That was what I had thought. Joel seemed a little skeptical at first, but then he started to listen to me, and 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 then he started to listen to me. I gave him a thumbs up and hopped into the bathroom on my good leg. I understood how hard it was to actually brush my teeth. Then I had to lean against the wall for support all the time. It was ridiculous. Then came the shower. Even though I knew there was no way I was going to be able to finish it without it all on, I still took off my underwear and jumped in, only to slip and almost fall, as Joel had suggested. I called his name and he came rushing in after me. I nodded at him. I still needed to shower, so resignedly and awkwardly Joel suggested he could help me with that. I didn't know what to say, and my sleep-deprived mind and body thought little about how strange it would look and how I would feel if I did. I nodded, and that was it. That was how I bathed on the third day after my car accident. When I woke up the next day, I realized that even our 2 years of friendship and closeness would not be enough to explain what had happened the night before. It was awkward as hell, but not awkward enough that it wouldn't happen again and again. After that first week, it was weird. I still remember how conflicted I felt every time I asked for his help, but my body had grown accustomed to his touch and care, and even though it felt bad to bother him every day, I couldn't help but think of the safety he would make sure I was safe. By the end of the first month, I was good enough to do things on my own. I still had to be careful, but I could have lived my life without spending another day in the shower with Joel. But did that happen? No, if that had happened, then I wouldn't be facing the crisis I was facing, because when I still had a cast on my leg, Joel started showering right after me, and then, as no one would expect, we were still in our underwear but touching each other. In our underwear, but bathing together, touching each other when necessary, and not talking much. Then we would go our separate ways and never come back to talk about it. Then the next day would come and the whole thing would be repeated, and it went on like that for the next month and a half. Nothing happened. We avoided looking in places where we shouldn't be showering and made it out of the bathroom well and alive. Nothing happened, and so even though it still seemed pointless, we kind of got comfortable with this system. We even started talking a little bit. But then the third month came, and something happened that reminded us that even if we talked, we wouldn't be talking to each other. Reminded us that even though we were talking in the shower, it was still weird as hell. On this particular day, we were in the shower talking about some work thing when I slipped and fell, and unfortunately Joel started laughing hysterically. I laughed with him, but still looked at him, but it was nothing serious. I was just glad I didn't fall on my still recovering side. Stupidly and strangely, I couldn't help but pull him down with me. I didn't know what I was aiming for, but when he fell down, I couldn't help it. I didn't know what I was aiming for, but when he fell on top of me, I stopped laughing. He kind of stopped laughing too. I had planned to embarrass him, but it seemed I had created another problem. He was between my legs, and thank God we weren't naked. But even so, I could feel his breath right on my cheek if that wasn't enough. When it looked like he was going to kiss me, I pulled my face away, and that was the end of it. For a few months, Joel didn't pull away from me. It was almost like if I looked at him again, something would have happened. He cleared his throat and then pulled away. He said he was going to escape first, and I nodded at him as he left. I sighed and leaned against the glass door. Oh God, what have we been doing all this time? I got up and cleaned up and ran into my bedroom. I didn't want to face him, so I called my sister Sue, and she reminded me that I hadn't seen her in months. Sue. And she reminded me that we had been showering together for so long. She wasn't really surprised. I mean, she started and stared right at me as I made my bed. It's not like anything happened, right, Brian? By now her laughter had died down. I could still see the redness in her face. I didn't want Joel to get the wrong idea. Nothing happened. I replied with a flushed face. It's still weird. I mean, how could it not be? I asked. I'm not saying I'm having another gay crisis over him right now. But what if he's not gay, Bree? I don't want to project, but I don't think any straight man would be willing to do what Joel has already done for you. Sue had a point, and I've never particularly wondered about the details of our system. But still, nothing that's happened between us in the past was an indicator that he was attracted to me. I didn't see that coming. You guys cook and clean for each other, she said. We're working adults. We expect that from each other, oh, she said, and rolled the word in her mouth. Then what about going to hell and back to make sure the other person is comfortable and stuff when sick or broken? She had a point. At this point, you're going to deny everything I say, so why not just see for yourself? I'm sure Joel has something to say. Joel had only had girlfriends up to this point. If he was going to say anything, it would probably be an apology for what happened earlier. Joel helped because he was a decent and kind person. There was nothing else Sue was projecting. But even if I said and thought those things, I couldn't help but wish and hope it was the opposite. Joel was a handsome man. Add to that his charming personality and caring attitude, and he was the perfect boyfriend recipe. I couldn't even achieve that. But Joel was my roommate and not my boyfriend. Was my roommate, not my boyfriend. No matter what my sister always thought about us. And now, after that almost kiss, I wondered how our future interactions would go. Shortly after I finished the video call with my sister, Joel knocked on my bedroom door. I replied. He rolled his tongue against his teeth and made a small noise. I was wondering if you wanted to go for a walk. It was Sunday, and you wanted to go for a walk. I looked at the time. It was after 11 o'clock. It would be nice to go for a walk, to get rid of stress and everything. He had his hands behind his back. He looked demure. It was a strange new look on him. We can come back soon if you like. I know with your leg you can't put much pressure on it. Yep, okay. We can go. My leg wasn't as bad as it was 3 months ago, and the doctor suggested I keep walking. Light exercise would be good for my leg. She had told me. I just need to change. Maybe you look good already, he said, pointing at me. I knew that half an hour later, during the walk, Joel actually talked about what had happened. He looked nervous, almost as nervous as I felt, but I reminded myself that if he felt at least a little disgusted with our shower arrangement, he would be disgusted with our shower arrangement. He would never have offered it or continued it after I got better. But the truth was that he had, and I had nothing to do or think about but hear him out. Whatever it was, I was sure I was ready for. But I wasn't. I expected him to talk about how it was a mistake and how he wasn't sure why he was doing it. How he wasn't sure why he said yes in the first place, or he didn't know. He went on with it. And while he said some of that, he said something more, and that extra bit was shocking to me. I mean, I've only dated girls before, but I understand I'm not just attracted to them, he said. And even though he said that he didn't really look at me, he said that he didn't really like me. I gave him the time to speak because I wasn't really sure what to say back. I already knew about his dating history for the past 2 years. We had shared almost everything about our personal lives. But then I helped you shower for a month or so. For a month or so, and I didn't feel weird about it. Then I continued to shower with you. And I don't know why. Okay, I said. What was I supposed to say to that? Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. What could I have said? I wasn't sure, and I realized he understood that too. Should we go back? I asked. There aren't many people around. I wasn't sure if I wanted to hear more about that moment. I was a little disappointed, but maybe that was because I was hoping for too much. I realized then that I had been hoping for too much for the last 2 years. I wondered. He started when he turned to move. How rude it would be to ask you if we could move past this, move past what I asked, and turned to him. The stuff that happened in the shower. I swallowed at the same time he did. He was nervous, but I was heartbroken. As surprising as that was for me, I was sure as hell sad to hear him say that. Well, at least he said it. I said, okay, he repeated oddly. He looked upset. I didn't have the heart to wonder if that was so. As far as I knew, I had something of a crush on him. So if anyone was hurt by his proposal, it was me. That's it. What do you want? I wanted to say that nothing happened between us, so there's really nothing to forget. I came out harder than I wanted to, but the words were out and Joel had already registered the tone. There was really nothing I could have done to take it all back. So I kept my mouth shut, hoping he'd take the hint. Well, he said a little more upset now. That's right. Let's go tomorrow. We both had our respective jobs to get back to. Thinking that was already annoying and stressful. I didn't want to add this unnecessary and stressful drama between Joel and me. It wasn't like we had actually done anything. A few days later, the awkwardness had managed to seep into every fiber of our lives. In every fiber of our lives, we were busy with our jobs from morning till night, and then we would come home and say a few words to each other. We had been together for 2 years by then, and it was not normal at all. It was suspicious, and it happened very fast on the first day. As always, Joel. Joel cooked for me. We divided our duties so that Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday were his responsibility. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday were mine. Sunday, we shared that responsibility according to that rule. Joel should have cooked something on Tuesday. He didn't, but I didn't say anything. I didn't think we were ready for that. I was angry and upset and hungry, and instead of saying anything to him, I changed and went into the kitchen to cook. I made sure to bang on every utensil I could find while I cooked. Was I being passively rude? Yes, I was, and I loved every second of it. I was mad at Joel for not talking to me. I was mad at him for not fulfilling his responsibilities, and I was mad at us that something so small had threatened our friendship. It wasn't like we were actually kissing. What the hell is expected? Joel came rushing into the kitchen. I looked at him curiously, my anger long forgotten, and he smiled weakly at me. I'm sorry, he said. I've been feeling a bit down since the afternoon. I thought I should take a nap. He rubbed his neck. I'll help you. You should rest, I replied. Joel looked sick. So it wasn't fair to get upset with him. I'll cook for both of us. Have you taken anything? No. I'm hoping it'll get better on its own. That was a problem with him. Joel hated medicine, and only I knew how much I'd struggled in those 12 days months ago. Then go and rest. Rest, I'll cook. It's okay. I'll help, he said, carefully taking the knife from my hand and standing next to me to cook. It's been a long time since we cooked together. I didn't want this on my conscience. He was sick, and he needed to rest. Go, Joel. Brian, he said softly, but I could hear the warning in his tone. Please, let me help you. You're tired. Let me help you. You're tired? It's my day anyway. Let me help you, or we can order something, I suggested to get out of the sticky situation. Just as I moved to leave the kitchen, he moved too and cornered me. His figure, only a few inches taller than me, seemed to loom over me. He was sick. He shouldn't have looked. Why aren't you listening to me? He asked, sounding genuinely curious. I am listening to you, I replied. Then he said inside, bold as he was, his eyes moving to my mouth. Then what? I asked. Then why aren't we talking? Why is everything so damn awkward between us? He sounded confused, and I couldn't possibly know how to get out of this confusion. Although it was not obvious that I had a romantic inclination towards him, his words and his behavior told me that it was not the same for him. On top of that, he had taken a special walk with me to tell me that he did not want to think about the shower incident anymore. What was I supposed to think about that? Things were obviously going to be awkward for a while, but even though I thought that, I didn't know if he wanted to hear it. So I said the first thing that came to mind, and it might not have been the best answer. Sure, but it was out there. You want to pretend? You didn't shower with the gay guy for 3 months, and I'm not going to force you to relive that memory. I'm in it. You were hurt, he said, as if that explained the next month and a half of us showering together and seeing each other wet in our underwear. Yeah, sure, and I don't want to think about it. Not because you're gay. It's not because you're gay, he said slowly this time, as if he was considering his words carefully, but because I wanted to kiss you. Oh, I blinked at him strangely. Despite the slight height advantage, he looked smaller than me, but that was probably because of his hunched shoulders. Yes, that was it. He nodded his head and finally looked at me. It was almost as if this was irrelevance for him, and it was funny because I thought this had happened to him a long time ago. You see, we weren't really on the same level here, and because it was so new to me, I kind of freaked out. I thought not thinking about it would be the right thing to do. I thought not thinking about it was the best course of action, but now things were awkward between us, as if we hadn't been friends for 2 years now. It was very obvious that he had only dated women before, but was I his by awakening at his great age of 34? Or was it 35? Did he even know that I wasn't so sure about any possible answer? So what now? I joked. He frowned. I'd love to, but I don't want to play with you like that. What did I think he meant by that? I'm pretty sure you need a stable relationship at this age, and I'm not some bum who's going to change everything. 10 times worse for you. I hadn't thought of it that way, but I didn't want to challenge him either. I just nodded my head, and he asked me if we should cook together or order in. I chose the latter. I needed time to think about it all, but then the order came and we sat down to eat, and he leaned over to wipe the sauce off. And he accidentally slipped and our lips touched for the briefest of seconds. It was almost as if the universe wanted us to kiss, because how the hell could you slip in that position? We stared at each other uncomfortably, and when I felt that he might want to kiss me again. With his heavy breathing and his curious and confused expression, I tried to push him again. He had just confessed an hour ago that he didn't want to use me, and I was sure it would break his heart if he ended up doing exactly that, considering his kind and sweet personality. And then this time we really kissed, as I had expected. His kiss was more exploratory than passionate, but kissing him felt so good. And right then my brain stopped working for a few minutes. I was so desperate to kiss him that I didn't think much about how it would affect either of us. I could vouch for that. I would have kissed him, but I couldn't say the same for him, so when he kissed me and when his hand got a little brave, I pulled back. I literally had to force myself to do it, but I managed to pull back. He seemed disappointed, but the realization hit him in the face, and he panicked. He got up and walked into his bedroom and locked himself, and I sat in silence for a while. My heart wanted to go back and kiss him, but I looked for my phone and called Sue the moment she picked up. I screamed into the phone a few days later. After that little kiss situation, I knew things were not going to be the same for Joel and me. We didn't really see eye to eye, and we both knew that this was going to be an issue, that we were going to have a problem. We were in our 30s, and while finding something like that at that age seemed a little daunting and thought I found out about myself in my late teens, I had gotten used to being given by the time I met and befriended Joel, but it wasn't the same for him. For all I knew, I was wondering about all this stuff. He was busy freaking out. Come to think of it, we hadn't really talked to each other since that night. We finished our chores, said hi or bye whenever we saw each other, and that was it. A few days went by like that, and then Sunday came. Joel knocked on my door. I called him in. He asked if I wanted to go out to dinner. We're not cooking tonight, I asked, despite the awkwardness that lingered between us. No. I just wanted to treat you. I wanted to talk about something. Okay, I said. My tone sounded a little dubious. It's important, he added. What could be better than discussing it over dinner? Well, I said, and licked my lower lip. His eyes seemed to follow the movement. I flushed a little. Let me get ready then. Where are we going? We went to a restaurant. It wasn't a high-end restaurant, no, but it was a decent place to eat. We had a good time. 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 It wasn't a high-end restaurant, no, but it was a decent place and the staff seemed friendly. We ordered and Joel looked at me. He crossed his hands over the table before he finally spoke. While I was excited to eat something good after a long time, I couldn't really get rid of the nervousness in me. Joel looked determined and slightly worried. But that had to happen, so he finally spoke. What was he saying? Or was he going to find another place to run in this weather and economy? Wow, I said, and that was all I could mutter. Joel clasped his hands tighter. I could see the bulging veins in his hands. I don't think I know Brian. I don't know Brian, but things have gotten pretty messy between us, and I accept a lot of that as my fault, but I still think I don't want to hurt you any more than I already have. That was the old dialogue. He said that to me a million times by now. I haven't. My tone was bitter. I'm not, he said, but I don't want to do anything that could possibly hurt you. He seemed to think that what you're doing right now is hurting me, Joel. I replied deliberately. We've been friends for so long, and we've taken care of each other through thick and thin. We've been friends for so long, and we've taken care of each other through thick and thin. And now you're letting this little thing jeopardize everything between us. I'm not jeopardizing anything, he muttered. We're still going to be friends. Don't make me laugh, I replied bitterly. We haven't really talked to each other since the shower thing and the actual kiss, and now you're avoiding me like you can't stand the sight of me. And that hurts me, Joel. How are we going to stay friends under different roofs if we can't even talk to each other in the same house? He swallowed. We can try, right? I sighed and leaned back in my seat. I closed my eyes. I wanted to get out of here as soon as possible. I could feel a coming headache and my hands were itching. The caller texted my sister to discuss this with her. It was her fault. She had filled my head with fantasies of finally dating my roommate. She should make it better now that there seemed to be zero chance of that ever happening. See, Joel said, it's not that I hate that part of me. I don't even doubt anymore that I like you more than a friend. But this is happening too. As a friend, but this is happening too fast for me. I don't understand myself any better now, but all I want to do is kiss you all the time. It's honestly kind of overwhelming for me, but I don't want to put you in a position. Well, you'll have to go through it all again. Again, you can't decide for me, I replied a little softer this time. I understood it a long time ago. I just accepted my interest in people of my gender. I had freaked out too. Every guy seemed like a potential boyfriend back then, and I couldn't stop falling for every other handsome and kind man. It was overwhelming for me, and that was the exact reason my first relationship was so messy. But we are older now, and we are past that. No one wanted to deal with a stupid partner at that age. A comfortable relationship seemed safer and more doable. Besides, what Joel had said almost sounded like a confession. Didn't he just say he liked me? Didn't he say he wanted to kiss me every chance he got? But I still didn't want to make things any worse than they already were. So I said the first thing that came into my head. You know? A few weeks ago, Sue sent me a link. I said. Oh, Joel perked up, probably relieved that we were past that conversation. Sure, it's fanfiction about us. I giggled a little. No way. Joel was laughing with me. In fact, she was the one who made me realize that I might have a crush on you. The words were out of my mouth long before my brain caught up with what I had just confessed. I put my hand over my mouth and stared at him in shock. My face was flushed, and so was his. Joel cleared his throat. Oh, wow. What hurt me was not his reaction, but the fact that he didn't stop looking for another home. I saw him scrolling through different websites or contacting different agents, but I never really noticed him thinking about what I had let slip out of my mouth that hurt me. 2 weeks later, the silence seemed to permeate every fiber of our lives again. Our shared department seemed so quiet now that it felt like he had already left. It was unbearable. After returning from work, I would go either for a walk like an old man or to the nearest pub. It seemed to have become a habit. We still fulfilled our respective duties and still shared a few exchanges, but it still seemed awkward. I was sure if we went another week without talking, it would end our friendship. Thankfully, something happened and prevented that from happening. Unfortunately, even though it cost me physical bruises, it was 2 weeks. Since that restaurant dinner when Joel asked if he could come with me to the pub, he had packed his things and told me he had found a decent enough one-room apartment somewhere. The place was almost 2 hours' drive from our current home. I checked. It was depressing. It seemed like the end of our friendship. Yes, that's okay. The walk to the pub was mostly silent. The most we talked about was our jobs, and he discussed how we were going to commute. Now it was going to be a little more troublesome now, and whose fault was it that I almost asked him to commute? Is always hectic, especially at rush hour, he added. I nodded my head, and it was back to silence. We reached the pub, we ordered our drinks, and watched the other people being happy. I didn't want to say it, but it was depressing. Why couldn't I be happy? After 15 minutes, Joel excused himself. I told him the toilets here weren't the cleanest, and to be careful. He gave me a thumbs up and stumbled off to the toilet. I expected the rest of the evening to go as smoothly, but when I got into trouble with a particularly burly and flirtatious man, I knew I had a problem. And flirtatious man, I knew that fate was not on my side tonight. What an awkward situation I was in. The stranger first offered me a drink. When I refused, he insisted that I drink it. He was sure that I would like his favorite drink. He insisted. Even then I told him that I wasn't interested and that I was here with a friend. But the man wouldn't accept that. He seemed like the kind of man that women often complain about. I once again felt for all the women. I shook my head and turned away from him. I was sure that I was a clear sign of disinterest, but he didn't seem to take it that way. Instead, he growled and shoved me violently away. I stumbled and hurt myself. The bartender slipped away quietly. He'd probably seen this movie 100 times by now and didn't want any part of it. What the hell? My problem was that I had never raised my hand to a human being in this situation, not even when I had revealed that I was gay to the outside world. I asked myself again when help arrived in the form of a familiar figure. I was bruised and broken, embarrassed and humiliated. I was close to tears while Joel and the bodyguards dealt with the man. I stumbled my way out. He had hit me in the leg, the same one that was still tender. I was some distance away from the pub. When Joel cut me up, he looked breathless. I felt sorry for him, but not as sorry as I felt for myself and the situation. Brian, he said breathlessly. Brian, how are you? What do you think? I hissed. Now I was angry with him. He was leaving me tomorrow, and I didn't want him to. If he really cared, he wouldn't be in this pub in the first place. If he really cared, I wouldn't be drinking myself into a stupor over the loss of a good friendship. If he really cared about me and my feelings, he wouldn't be running away from me. I should have come earlier, he said, but the line was so long. I don't care, Joel. Let's just go home. They'll take him to the cops. Joel told me he'll get him. I said I don't care. I repeated, Brian, you're hurt. Let's call a cab, no? I told him it would cost us a fortune. I can walk, Brian, he said desperately. I'm sorry. What are you sorry for? He let out a heavy sigh and held my hand before I could take another step. Brian, things are difficult as it is, and I don't want to make things worse, huh? I replied, I can't let you live alone. He covered my hand with his own. I can't risk not seeing you for a day. I can't risk not knowing how you're doing. He sighed and played with my fingers. I wanted to leave, and I've packed my things and everything, but I don't want to go. I want to stay with you. It was a choice you made, I reminded him tiredly. Yes, and I regret it. It seems pointless to run away from you. I'm a grown-up man and I don't want to run away from you. I'm a grown-up man and I don't want to run away from you. I'm a grown-up man and I don't want to run away from you. I'm a grown-up man and I don't want to run away from you. I don't want to run away from happiness or even sadness. Living with you makes me happy, and so does kissing you. I wanted to run away because I was so worried that I was trying to risk everything for something that happened only a few weeks ago. But our history goes back a long way. 2 years. Brian, it's not just 3 or 4 weeks. If I felt anything weird about you, I wouldn't have showered with you for 3 months. I wouldn't have wanted to kiss you. But the truth is that I do. And what's the point of running away from it all when you want the same thing? And today I saw you get hurt, and he stopped and swallowed. I realized I can't let it happen again. I mean, I'm sure you can defend yourself very well, but I want to be there regardless. Okay, I replied. I wasn't sure what to say. I'm afraid, though, he said again. I'm afraid that doing this will jeopardize your comfort and your happiness. You've already been through this, and you've already been through this. I reminded him, yes, but I've never dated a guy before. I've never slept with a guy. He dropped my hand and crossed his arms over his chest. His eyes were downcast. And if we do anything about it, you'll have to be my teacher. You'll have to guide me and be patient with me. And I don't want you to have to deal with all that. I'm not a teenager. I'm not a teen anymore. It's never too late, Joel. I replied. People learn at their own pace, but have you ever wondered if I have a problem with that? I asked. No, he replied. I mean, yes, but maybe I was projecting. Maybe I agreed. Look, I'm not saying it's going to be easy for me or for you, but at least you won't have to go through all of this alone. We don't even have time to think about it that much. We live paycheck to paycheck, and running away is not a solution, he said. And running away is not a solution? I agreed and nodded at him as he finally looked at me. If it doesn't work out, then we can stay friends. But if you like me and I like you, then it wouldn't hurt to give it a try. He sniffed and nodded. He then sighed and ran a hand through his hair. What? I asked. Now I have to unpack. I shrugged at him. Oh geez, he mumbled, and ran the hand through his hair again. Are we really going to give it a try? He asked. If you want to. I said, yes, I'd love to. I said, yes, I'd love to. I said, I'd love to. I said, yes, I'd like that. He nodded and swallowed. You can kiss me as much as you want to, I suggested. Oh, he said, and his eyes brightened a little. That's awesome. I shrugged and smiled into the soft kiss he tentatively pressed against my lips. Your sister's going to love this, he said, and helped me balance as we resumed our walk to our shared home. Yep, she's finally going to write happy stories. Wait, she's written sad ones. I nodded. Most of them ended on a sad note, hopefully. Not anymore. I couldn't say exactly why, but our relationship wasn't as messy as my sister had expected. Sure, Joel was a lot shyer than usual around me now that we were secretly friends, but it seemed to work like a perfectly oiled machine. As promised, we started slow. One day, Joel suggested we start showering again, but then we thought, no, maybe not. Now we were sure to push the boundaries that I was sure Joel would never push. I was sure Joel wasn't ready, but that would come with time. Sue was sure this would happen. She was sure I would tell her every detail so she could work it all into her fanfiction. I wasn't. The end. How willing are you to risk your friendship with a longtime boyfriend for a possible relationship?